Hi, this is Christina with White Mountain Endurance, and I'm trying something weird here. I'm trying to stream on Facebook and Instagram. And today I want to talk about the magic of running 100 miles. I guess I'll let the cat out of the bag. I am actually running a 100-mile race in 2 weeks, and every couple of years I like to do something like that. It's my stupid human feat. And there's just something magical about doing that distance. So if you have any questions about anything running 100 miles, feel free to throw it up on the screen and I'll try to answer it the best that I can. A little background, I've done several 100-mile races, and I've also done the White Mountain 100, which is a 100-mile section in the Appalachian Trail in New Hampshire, super rugged. So I tend to prefer the harder, more challenging courses. And I've experimented with many different methods of training for races. And one of the things that I found is every single race is different. And it doesn't matter how perfect your training has been, and it doesn't matter how terrible it's been, because my absolute best 100 miler, I had the worst training in the world. Showed up planning on chasing cutoffs and had like the most magical day ever down in Alabama. Part of it was probably having some incredible friends down there crewing me, but the race was fun, and I think going at it with a very relaxed attitude helped me. Now, when you're training for a 100-mile race and seeing this kind of like the 100-mile season, it's important to start thinking about it far enough in advance so that you can figure out what type of runner you are. Some people excel at high mileage and other people just break. So it's good to take a year or two to kind of figure out, okay, am I a high mileage runner? Do I need to cross train or do low mileage, add some biking in? I found that if I started doing anything over 60 miles a week, I was riddled with injuries. I wasn't happy, I was miserable, and I had a really hard time. Also, it caused issues where there were several races I wasn't even able to toe the line at. So I guess that's where I'll begin my talk. Is the hardest part about a 100-mile race isn't when you hit the registration button and pay all that money. The hardest part is getting to the starting line. How the heck do you get there? Some people have never run that distance before. Some people have run it before, have had various experiences, but once you get to the starting line, you know you're going to start that race, and you don't really know what kind of day you're going to have because it's 100 miles. And if you go into a 100-mile race and say that you're not nervous or freaked out a little bit, good for you. You're way braver than me. I am always freaked out by the distance because so many things can happen. You can spend the entire day throwing up, pooping, feeling nauseous, or you can just have the best day in the whole world. Or even better, you get to experience everything. So when you start your training, figure out, are you a high mileage runner or a low mileage runner? You should always incorporate a strength training program into your routine because that's going to help prevent injury. So if you can do those 100 mile weeks, great, but you probably don't want to roll those into your plan until a few months out because the potential for hurting yourself, getting burnt out, and not being able to toe the line is a lot greater. Personally, I like the 50 miles a week of running and about 50 miles a week on the bike, and that's my sweet spot for my body. Obviously, you need to play around with it, or work with a coach and figure out what works best for you. The other big thing with running 100-mile races, you don't need to do speed work. There's very little benefit unless you are one of those people going for a record, trying to do some 10 or 11-hour 100-mile race. Impressive, awesome, but for most of us, our goal is to simply finish and feel really good about our race. You're not really sprinting in a 100-mile race. And speed workouts really shouldn't last more than an hour. So, in the big picture, I have found that speed workouts are detrimental to my training because they break me down too much. And when I coach athletes for longer events, I'll actually take out their speed work and replace it with moderate effort long runs. So, majority of the training for a 100-mile race should be a little bit below what you think your race pace should be. And I love a combination of the Maffetone 80-20 method. If you haven't read Matt Fitzgerald's new book yet, you should get it, read it. The thing is phenomenal. And it goes into much more detail about all of these things. I've also been using HRV to monitor how I feel during my training so that I can adjust my schedule on the fly if I wake up and all of a sudden my HRV is tanked. So definitely a lot that your body can tell you during your training. So heart rate, morning temperatures, HRV, you can check your overnight HRV and you can check your morning one. All these little pieces of information tell you how you're doing with your training, if you're getting sick, and when you should proceed and when you should hold back. So nutrition is another big piece to the 100-mile puzzle. A lot of people think that you just do gels and bars. So most of us, it takes us 24 hours or so to do a 100-mile race. What would your gut feel like if all you ate were gels and bars? Again, some people can do it. I'm jealous. That's awesome to have such a simple race strategy. But realistically, on a daily basis, you're not eating all that stuff. What are you eating? You're eating food. So I like to train for these races by eating real food. And sometimes I'll do these awful food choices, which basically make me not feel great. Oatmeal with some sort of nut butter, things that just sit in your stomach like a brick, and I run through it. And the reason is if you start having stomach problems on race day, you need to know how to deal with it. That is a game ender for so many people, and something that I've learned over the years. You can turn your tummy around. It's not fast, but you can walk, you can change what you're eating, you can figure out what's working for you, and you can totally turn the tummy situation around so that you're not crapping your brains out and throwing up every 5 minutes. Sometimes you get in that barf cycle, you can't break it, and that's a personal choice whether you want to have a vom fest and shit fest or if you want to keep going. I think most of us want to keep going and definitely makes for some pretty wild stories to tell afterwards. But, always make sure you're safe. And that's where practicing these things and training is going to come into play. I do supplement with gels, but I don't have that many. So it's playing around with what's going to be at the aid stations. Typically, they're sweet, salty. You'll find that your nutritional desires change during the race. So you may be wanting sugar for the first 20, 30 miles. And then all of a sudden, you'll come over to the aid station table and damn, those potatoes are the best potatoes you've ever had. 20 miles later, that might change and all you want is ramen. So my personal theory is train with the random foods you plan on seeing at the aid station. If you have crew or drop bags, put the foods that you want to have with you in those drop bags or give it to your crew. But ultimately, figure out your nutrition strategy with real food because real food is going to make you feel good. Things that have a lot of fiber might cause some digestive issues, and later on in the race, around mile 80, you might be pooping more than you want to be. So um, I'd be really wary of Larabars, dates, things like that. Things that sit really well are, your simple pastas. I love rice, boiled sweet potatoes, ramen, veggie or chicken broth. Sometimes at night, a grilled cheese, some sort of quesadilla. I mean, the choices are endless, and really, it's what do you love? Game changer to race for me once was a pierogi. So you never know what kind of weird food item is going to make you feel good. If you do find yourself getting wicked sick and you've got like that deep down pain in your gut and you just feel like you're going to vomit and you look like you're 9 months pregnant, start walking, sip a little bit of water. You may want some broth and really pay attention to my next topic, electrolytes. You can do too many. So again, this comes down to your training. Practice with different electrolytes. What works best for you? There are some that are super sugary and sweet and some that aren't. So you need to figure out which one tastes good. Pay attention to what's the weather going to be like where you're racing. I'm doing javelina. I'm running the thing in a costume. I don't have a time goal. I'd love to break 24 hours, but ultimately, I'm just looking to go party. So for me, it's really hot. So I need to find food choices and electrolyte choices that make me feel good during that race. So I've been spending time out in the desert just learning what makes me feel good, what makes me feel sick, what food choices are delicious. I'm kind of digging the watermelon and the sweet potatoes and the banana chips right now. So I think I'll start with that on race day and then kind of roll into whatever the day brings to me. Another thing, kind of like backstory, but I now have an anaphylactic reaction to soy and peanuts. So for me, it's really hard to eat anything because if you flip the package around, there's soy in everything. Some things don't list soy as an ingredient. So my face swells and I get diarrhea when I have soy. Had a bag of Uncle Ben's rice last night, didn't say there was soy on the package, ate it, had a reaction. And as terrible as this sounds, I had a great morning practicing running with diarrhea. And what I did is I know that while I'm in the desert, I'm not going to be pooping on the course like some races I've done where you can go run off in the woods, dig a hole, and bury it. Not a possibility during this race. So practice holding it. Go before the run, do my 5.5 mile run. Did not feel great in the tummy, got to the toilet, took care of it. And, it's disgusting, but these are things that are important to practice. Like, how do you manage having stomach upset? How do you manage if you get diarrhea? How do you turn that around? So definitely practice, practice, practice. It's like anything else in life. The more you do it, the better off you're going to feel and the more you're going to know. Again, 100-mile races can be anything from flat to runnable. I mean, from runnable to mountainous. So you want to make sure you're training on the terrain that is the closest to where you'll be racing. And being in New Hampshire in the White Mountains, training for a flat as pancake course like Javelina, where people are throwing down 13, excuse me, 13 and 14-hour times, um, it's very different than where I live. So I don't have an opportunity back home to train on terrain that's very similar, which is part of the reason that I'm out here early is so that I can get my body used to running on flat. Obviously, there are rail trails and things like that I could have gone to, but I wanted heat training and I wanted to practice on flat and came out here a little bit early to prepare for that. So, that's been a bit of a learning experience as well is how do I move on flat terrain? How do I move on flat terrain in the heat? If you're training for a mountainous event, you need to be in the mountains so that you know what it feels like. Your bulk of your training should be easy, but then you should also have some back to back, somewhat long days on the weekends. And, it's everyone gets focused on mileage, but I find that training by hours is a lot better. And your body can only handle so many hours of training before it's detrimental to your training. So, what I'll do in a training cycle is you figure out how long your body can last before it starts to deteriorate, and that's your reset week. So, you'll take a very easy week off from your training, and excuse me, maybe you'll do nothing, maybe you'll do very easy workouts, but you reduce your mileage, you reduce your intensity, use it as a time to kind of reflect and recover. Sleep is huge. Make sure you get plenty of sleep while you're training. And then you can roll back into that training cycle feeling rested and recovered instead of just beating the hell out of yourself for a year, hoping you get to the starting line not broken. So make sure you're getting plenty of sleep. Make sure you're eating plenty of food because training for these things makes you hungry and you need food to function and you need muscle to run. And there's nothing good about depriving yourself. So make sure if you want to eat whatever you want to eat. It doesn't matter if you're vegan, carnivore, just get good quality food in your body and definitely take advantage of sleep. Another big thing is stress management. So, learning how to manage stress in your personal life prior to showing up at a race, which can be a stressful day, will really help you so that when those stressful moments start to happen during the race, you know that you can compose yourself and kind of regroup and be like, no, I've totally got this. I don't have to be stressed right now. And whether you're blowing your time goal or you put too much pressure on yourself, it doesn't matter. What matters is being able to reset your mind frame and say, well, I blew my time goal. My goal now is to simply finish. And there is no better feeling than crossing the finish line and having somebody hand you that stupid buckle. And it might just be a buckle, But in that moment that they say, congratulations for finishing this race, I don't care if you're the first or the last runner, everything you experienced during the time you were out there is pure magic. And whether at the time it was a great experience or a bad experience, really embrace the fact that you finished and you tried your best and enjoy that buckle. It's a really well deserved. And I think the races that you struggle the most in are the ones that you remember the most, and those are the sweetest. The ones that you have like that perfect day, they're great, but they're not the ones you're going to look back on and smile and be like, wow, I really surprised myself. I'm really proud of pulling through. So, when you are at the event, your attitude is so important. And that brings me to my next topic. This is a little bit of a longer talk because I just love hundreds, but it's visualization. I actually will have my clients visualize their race. How are you going to feel at mile 20? How are you going to feel at mile 40? How are you going to feel if all of a sudden you start vomiting? How are you going to feel when your body's telling you no? How are you going to manage that? So it's setting up all these scenarios, and every time you go for a run, see the finish line. Make sure you see yourself finishing that race and finishing it strong and finishing it happy. And visualize yourself at different parts of the course. And if you are like myself and you've done several of these events, I personally know miles 73 to 85 are my struggle miles. So, how am I going to manage my struggle miles? So, on my runs, I practice that. I practice visualizing, okay, this is how I'm going to feel, and this is how I'm going to work my way through it. So, you always want to make sure that you are focused on not only the moment, because you should be focusing on the run that you're on, but you should also be thinking about your race. It's rehearsal time. We don't just show up and do something without rehearsing it. We don't take a test without training or practicing for it. So it's really important for you to practice and prepare yourself for anything that could happen on race day. The other important thing is if you have crew, pacers, friends or family, people that are supporting you, make sure you're nice to them. Make sure you have a long discussion about your plan. Sometimes you get really down, and what do you want them to do when you're down? Some people want quiet time. Some people want you to crack jokes, but don't ever be mean to the people that are helping you. Just take a deep breath and let them help you because that's what they're there for. So these are all things that you guys need to have conversations about before you go to the race together so that you do have a smooth race because having tension with the people that you're going to the race with doesn't make for a good day. You don't want to be fighting with crew members. You don't want to be angry at family. You want to show up happy, totally psyched, and working together to get you through an amazing experience because for a lot of 100-mile races, it's not just one person. You have people that you trained with, you have people that are coming to the race for you, you have people cheering you on, you have volunteers. I mean, there's so much more than just you at these races. So remember that. Anyone have any questions or? All right, I'm almost done rambling on. So I guess practice everything, practice running in the dark, practice visualization, practice your nutrition. If you are thinking of just doing gels and bars, try those things for 24 hours and see how you feel. Kind of gross, kind of nasty, but you need to know how you function on those for a very long time. And most of all, enjoy your training. Have fun. It's always awesome to have a goal, but ultimately your goals should be fun and finishing. And that's my goal with the race that I'm doing at the end of the month. I've heard it's a great party. I can't wait. I'm psyched to see friends there. I'm psyched to run the race, experience the course, and I hope any of you that are looking to do a 100-mile race, you get out there and do it. Doesn't matter how old you are. Um, you can train, you can finish for one of these things. So have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you for listening. chat soon.